All right, there are a lot of crazy theories going around. There's a lot of crazy speculation about what the 49ers may or may not do. Let's just stick to logic and reason. I feel it's the same cycle every single season in the offseason, but this one is going to be particularly toxic and particularly tough because the 49ers just lost the Super Bowl. So that leads to microanalysis over microanalysis, and then it leads to some just completely off the wall takes. I want to keep this grounded in reality as we look through the 49ers roster position by position. How the 49ers might build around Brock Purdy and Brandon Aiyuk. Yes, both of those guys, because it's likely that Brandon Aiyuk is also going to be a 49er next year before people get really carried away. I talked about all the different potential scenarios for the 49ers a little bit earlier in the video a couple hours ago. So we get it. We understand that there obviously is a chance that Brandon Aiyuk is not with the 49ers next season, but in all likelihood, he will be with them. And with that being said, we can take a look at the 90-man roster and see how the team is going to build around him. This is the roster reset. For the first time, I've made a 53-man roster projection. It said I wasn't going to do it till March, and then I said, screw it. I'm going to divide this up into a 53-man projection. So on the left, the left side of this bold vertical line, you've got the players who I think would make the 53-man roster. I'm obviously looking ahead. It's tougher to do because we haven't gone through free agency or the draft yet. And on the right side, I have players not making the 53-man roster. Technically, since I only have 41 making the 53, I have 12 more spots right now, but this is how the 49ers have to view the construction of their team. They have to say, we have 11 draft picks and we have however many slots in free agency. Obviously, you don't anticipate every single one of the draft picks making the 53, so they're going to have some free agents, and I wouldn't expect a lot of the guys on the right to make the 53. Now, somebody like Danny Gray over here in the receiver column is very interesting. I tend to err on the side of him not making it, though, because he was healthy for a couple months this season and was not able to come off of injured reserve. That's how far down the pecking order he was. So Danny Gray is going to have a chance to earn favor back with Kyle Shanahan, but it didn't end on a good note for him in 2023. So position by position, let's take a look at this. Brock Purdy at that quarterback spot. Last year, remember just how different it is between this year and last year. Everybody was talking about Purdy, Trey Lance, and obviously they signed Sam Darnold during free agency. This doesn't include Darnold anymore. Obviously, Lance has been traded because Darnold's contract expires. He's technically part of the 49ers until March, until the start of the new league year, but they'd have to re-sign Sam Darnold, and I think there's a very good opportunity for him elsewhere, potentially. I think that Sam Darnold probably, somebody's going to want to bring him in with a chance to start. The 49ers have a good enough reputation with Brian Griese in that quarterback room now, who's done such good work with Purdy, with Jimmy Garoppolo, played his best football under Brian Griese. I thought that Trey Lance actually developed a lot in terms of his play action, pocket style passing, drop back game. He obviously was really raw when he came into the 49ers system. The marks have been good across the board for Brian Griese. And because of that, because Sam Darnold has had a chance to go through the system, I would expect that he would be priced out of the 49ers contention for that backup quarterback spot. But, they're still probably going to sign a veteran. I still think that this team is defined by its experience in that 2023 season, 2022 season moving into 2023. That obviously featured all of those quarterback injuries. And just because they just went through a season with minimal quarterback injuries doesn't mean that the 49ers are going to risk it all with Brock Purdy this year and then just somebody like Brandon Allen or a rookie behind him. I do think that they are going to go the path of perhaps a veteran in need of reputation repair at that quarterback position. Running back, they've got some guys under contract. You've got McCaffrey, you've got Elijah Mitchell. We'll put Jordan Mason in here. I had him in the fullback column because it was too full. But right now, Jordan Mason is behind Mitchell. Both of those players, Mitchell and Mason, under contract for one more season. McCaffrey under contract for 2 more. You're going to have to add a running back, either through undrafted free agency or However, you get him maybe even through the draft because you do need somebody for the practice squad. So they're going to want to add somebody into the building for that job. And it might be another year to add a fullback through undrafted free agency, somebody to learn under Kyle Juszczyk in case Kyle Juszczyk isn't with the 49ers forever. But Juszczyk is still under contract. He's still a essential part of this offense. So many of the difficult blocks that the 49ers ask their skill position players to execute, they ask Kyle Juszczyk to execute those. I still remember 2019, week 2, 49ers in Cincinnati had Carlos Dunlap, who is, I mean, he's a physically imposing edge rusher. And the 49ers were running a play fake concept, and they left Dunlap unblocked by their offensive line as Jimmy Garoppolo slightly rolled out. And the job for Kyle Juszczyk was to reach across Garoppolo and block Carlos Dunlap, a defensive end. There probably isn't another skill position player in the NFL who can execute that job. And people who are just focused on Juszczyk's supposedly limited touches, even though I think that he became more involved in the offense over the playoffs, he became a great 4th, 5th option for the 49ers. That catch that he made near the sideline off of the Brock Purdy rollout right before the 49ers drive stalled in overtime. Imagine if they had scored and won. We'd still be talking about that Purdy to Juszczyk connection. So he's important in that regard, but he's vital. He's absolutely vital as one of the cogs blocking in that offense. He's so athletic, yet he's stocky too, so he can get to the defensive ends. He can take out those edge rushers for the outside zone. They need it, but they need it for the inside plays too. They need it for the passing plays and pass protection that I talked about. Kyle Juszczyk is not somebody that's just expendable for the 49ers. The cap hit moves up to $6 or $7 million this year, but there's a reason that I don't plan on erasing Kyle Juszczyk's name from this roster anytime soon. So maybe he gets an understudy at fullback this year. We shall see. Receiver room: Aiyuk, Samuel, Juwan Jennings, Ronnie Bell. I have them on the inside. I've got Tay Martin, who was on the practice squad this past year and got a couple of call-ups. And I have Danny Gray right now in a spot where he's going to have to prove himself next season. 2 more years on his rookie deal. He absolutely, though, is, I think, right now in a spot where he has to show Kyle Shanahan something, because Gray, he hurt himself at the end of training camp. He went on IR. The 49ers were able to activate him, but they chose not to this season. And he was healthy for the last couple months of the season. And even though they did have some injuries in that wide receiver room, they decided to go with guys like Chris Conley and Willie Snead instead of Danny Gray, which was not a vote of confidence in Danny Gray. So going to be proving grounds for him come the start of training camp. I expect Brandon Aiyuk to be there. And we'll go as far as to say this: if they don't trade Aiyuk before the NFL draft, Brandon Aiyuk is going to be part of the 49ers this season. Because, again, the King's ransom theory is what applied to Deebo Samuel 2 years ago. It's going to apply to Brandon Aiyuk this year. You're looking to get better now if you're the 49ers. You're definitely not looking to get worse now. So the only way that you could possibly get better while shipping away one of these star wideouts is so important to your football team and your offense as a whole. The only way that you're going to see that possible improvement if one of those guys leaves is if you get a sizable return of draft capital right now. Maybe you could swing a player in it. Those deals get way more complicated, but generally these players are for draft pick. These trades are for draft picks. And then you'd have to use those draft picks this year. So the trade would have to happen before the draft to try to make the team better, maybe in a different area, maybe somewhere like offensive line. Again, threading that needle is not easy at all. And I think threading that needle is something that, because it's not easy, because the 49ers are in such a tight spot, because they are in win now mode, it's just something that they're not likely to do unless they get that King's ransom offer for somebody like Brandon Aiyuk. It was the same case with Deebo Samuel 2 years ago. All right, moving forward, tight end. Tight end room is really thin. You know, there's talk. Somebody was saying the other day, oh, yeah, this is it for George Kittle. It's like, what? Who do you want a tight end behind George Kittle? Who do you want to play next? Do you want Cam Latu, who dropped like 7 passes in training camp before going on IR last year? Do you want him to be a featured player on a team that's trying to win a Super Bowl? I mean, guys, like, star players take you to Super Bowls. Star players can win Super Bowls. You've got to you got to look at this realistically. People are emotional because they think that George Kittle shouldn't have said hello to George Karlaftis, even though it had absolutely no impact on that play. So people just want to strike George Kittle from the record. Well, the problem is the only tight end that you have with real NFL experience on the roster behind him is Braden Willis. This is going to be a second-year man out of Oklahoma. I mean, maybe you can bring Dwelly back for another one-year contract. I believe he's already signed 6 of those with the 49ers. Maybe you can draft a tight end. They've been looking at a lot of tight ends early on between the Senior Bowl and all the other scouting that's been happening so far. So that could be a possibility. But if there is going to be a passing of the torch at some of these high-priced positions, it probably won't be until 2025, not here for this 2024 season. So keep an eye on that, and just know that George Kittle is a very good player, has a very good rapport with Brock Purdy, like Kyle Juszczyk, can execute a ton of difficult blocks, and there is absolutely no reason for the 49ers to be parting ways with somebody like George Kittle right now if they are in the business of becoming a better football team tomorrow. Offensive line. We know they need to fortify the tight end spot. Offensive line, they've got a lot of guys back under contract. And when you look at this along the offensive line, Williams obviously has got the $30+ million cap hit. Aaron Banks is back. This is going to be his final season, so it's going to be a contract year for Aaron Banks. So that adds to the urgency to draft a lot of offensive linemen this year. I think you're going to have to draft multiple, so that way you have option power. Remember, Aaron Banks, it took him an entire season of seasoning, 2021 behind the scenes before he took over the starting job in 2022. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Jake Brendel, the center, he's on the extension that they signed him to before the 2023 season. But I think that the entire interior line, the 49ers would not be averse to an upgrade. I have Spencer Burford on there twice. I just erased the second mention of Spencer Burford. He's slotted in as right guard, but my question is, do you bring back the guy who took his job this past year in John Feliciano? Or do you find another veteran offensive lineman that can help shore up the interior? Colton McKivitz, same question. Are you able to find something that can upgrade at right tackle? McKivitz signed a 2-year deal. He's going to be on year 2 of that contract. You've got Jalen Moore, who's a swing tackle at best, I believe, with his ceiling of what we've seen so far. And you have Nick Zakelj, who I think might have a decently high upside, but he's just was so raw coming in, and he tore his biceps last year. So he should be off of IR next year, and we'll see if Zakelj can get in the mix. I know they were talking about him at center because they talk about him taking people over mentally, but that to me is a future project at best. Brendel is the odds-on favorite to retain his center position, and I don't know what's going to happen on the right side. That is the 49ers' biggest weakness. I've talked about it in previous shows. Need for improvement. Offensive line, it's as simple as that. The 49ers need to stockpile bodies along that offensive line. You look at the practice squad projections, they're replacing Alfredo Gutierrez, who ran out of time on his international player exception, with his teammate from Mexico, former college teammate. Alfredo was the right tackle at Monterrey. Isaac Alarcon, who spent the past few years with the Dallas Cowboys as their international exception, he was the left tackle on the team that Gutierrez was the right tackle of in Monterrey. So the 49ers signed Alarcon. I think they might have gotten a good word of recommendation from Alfredo Gutierrez. Alarcon's going to be working in Gutierrez's old spot as a practice squad tackle. And you've got Corey Luciano out of Danville, who was with the team on the practice squad last year. He's going to be the P squad center. And Sebastian Gutierrez, who they brought onto the practice squad late last season. So it's much more fortifying needed. I'm curious to see if they bring in 1, 2, maybe even 3 veterans. And I'm curious to see probably 2 at most, I would say, on the veteran end. But how many draft picks are the 49ers going to use on this offensive line? All right, we're going to move on to the defensive line. This one is wild right here. Let me count this up. 4, 6, 10. There are 13 defensive linemen under contract with the 49ers right now on February 19th. They take this position group really seriously. Now, out of the 13 that are under contract right now, I only have 6 projected to make the 53-man roster. So that means there's still going to be plenty of work along the defensive line as far as roster building goes for the 49ers. Obviously, Bosa, there's Armstead. No, you don't let go of Armstead. He played so well in the Super Bowl on a torn meniscus. And just because the 49ers lost that Super Bowl, people want to part ways with Eric Armstead. They've already doubled and tripled down on Armstead with restructures. It wouldn't make a whole lot of financial sense. Javon Hargrave is still early in his time with the 49ers. And Hargrave played with a torn thumb ligament in that Super Bowl. Was he a top 3 defensive tackle this year, pass rushing wise? No, but he was top 8, top 9 this year, Javon Hargrave. So I think they're hoping for a little bit more from him against the pass next year. But it wasn't like he was bad this year. He just wasn't one of those top 2, top 3 guys like Chris Jones for the 49ers. But he did earn a big sack in that Super Bowl. And I think that generally speaking, the 49ers' problem with their defense was with Steve Wilks. Wasn't with these defensive linemen who really rounded into form by the end of the year. Now, Chase Young is not here. Randy Gregory is not here. Can they bring one of those guys back? Well, they say they want Young back, or Bosa says he does, but we'll have to wait to see what the price is. Robert Beal played a few snaps. He's going to be a second-year guy out of Georgia. I talked to him before the Super Bowl. He's going to be ready for his opportunity. Drake Jackson's going to be coming off of a knee injury. They're not going to be very proven at that edge spot opposite Bosa unless they sign somebody or re-sign somebody like Chase Young or go for somebody in the draft. But it's going to be tough if you're not picking until number 31. So work to do along this offensive line. They've brought in this guy Sam Okoyaninu and Raymond Johnson and Ernest Brown IV. These are all developmental defensive ends. And the 49ers can hope that they strike gold with one of these guys, even if the likelihood is not very high. They'll see what they have in the offseason, and maybe one of them can earn a rotational role over here opposite Nick Bosa. We got our first injury situation when we move to linebacker. Dre Greenlaw, Achilles. You've got to hope that the fact that he's 26 years old and not 28 like Navarro Bowman was when he tore his Achilles allows Greenlaw to heal and get back to at least close to full speed. That being said, this might be where Azeez Al-Shaair can be available. He signed a 1-year deal with the Titans, wasn't with the Niners for a year. Bring back your old number 3 to be the number 2 while Greenlaw recovers. Seems like that could be a decent deal for the 49ers. Seems like Al-Shaair might be amenable to it since he actually huddled up with his teammates before the divisional round game against the Packers after Tennessee had been eliminated. D. Winters played in the Super Bowl, the rookie out of TCU, when the 49ers started seeing all those injuries at linebacker. So I think he's ahead of Jalen Graham, who was also drafted in 2023 on the pecking order, but I would expect Jalen Graham to also make the roster. But at least one more signing here, maybe 2, and who knows, it might be Azeez Al-Shaair because you've got to insulate yourself as Dre Greenlaw recovers. Cornerback position, do these 3. I think Isaiah Oliver is going to get cut. I think that when we look at the fact that this was a Steve Wilks pickup and he was benched early in the season, there's $2+ million of cap savings. I don't think Oliver is going to be around next year. That's my prediction. We'll see if the 49ers rethink stuff, but I would be surprised. That being said, that'll open up a DB spot. We'll see who they draft. We'll see if they can bring in a veteran name. Charvarius Ward's a lockdown number 1. They've got a lockdown number 1. Deommodore Lenoir is a really damn good cornerback as well, coming into his own. I like their top 2, but Ambry Thomas is entering a contract year. Darrell Luter Jr. was a rookie. Sam Womack is going to be in his 3rd year. Are the 49ers comfortable with any of those 3 guys being their number 3 corner, or do they want to try to upgrade? Can they take a bigger swing in the draft? Do they want to sign somebody? They have Keeman Hall coming off the practice squad from last year. I have him as 90-man depth. And it's a big we shall see at the cornerback position. We'll also see what kind of coverages the 49ers are playing with whoever the new defensive coordinator is. Finally, safety, Jair Brown, and then Hufanga. Talanoa is coming off the torn ACL. So do they bring back the 34-year-old Tashawn Gibson as insurance with Hufanga coming off an injury? Do they draft a stud here? Do they think that Taylor Hawkins is somebody that can fill in at the start of the season? They brought Eric Harris, the veteran, back, but he's more of a special teams guy. We could even put Eric Harris into this slot right here. Probably would be a better spot for him. So safety a little bit thin because you've only got 2 names that are contract that are healthy with Talanoa Hufanga currently rehabbing. Pepper, Moody, Wishnowsky, the special teams unit. So there's your run through the 49ers roster. Wanted to give you a nice logical look at what San Francisco might do. Check out the other video for the whole salary cap situation and the Brandon Aiyuk discussion. I think I get into a lot more detail over there. All right, everybody have a good night. Happy, what is it, Monday? Wow, it's Monday. No Monday Night Football, not for a while. We'll talk to everybody very soon.